Welcome to day 55. We will be reading Numbers chapters 14 to 16 today and Mark chapter 3. Once again, we've got complaining going on as the Israelites are in the wilderness. The Back to Egypt Committee has formed once again, and they want to return back to Egypt. They want to go back. They would rather die in Egypt than go through whatever it is that God wants them to go through in the wilderness. Now, Joshua and Caleb were the two scouts that were sent into Canaan who were faithful to God and trusted God and advocated for the people going into the promised land. They point out that if God is pleased with us, he will lead us into this land, and they firmly believe that God is on their side. The community is against them, and, as per usual, they want to go stone them to death. But God is like, how long will these people refuse to trust me? Now, these are the people that God has brought out of Egypt. These are the people who saw the miracles of the Passover and the firstborn deaths among the Egyptians. They saw the miracle of coming through the Red Sea. They've seen different things going on. They've seen the cloud of fire and the cloud during the day of God's presence, and they are still not believing in God. They are still not trusting God. They are still not obedient. Moses says to God, because God is lost, and he's like, I'm killing everyone, I'm sending a plague. And Moses is like, what will the Egyptians think? You worked so hard to save these people, and now you've got them in the wilderness, and you're going to kill them all. This is not a good testimony to the Egyptians. So Moses says, please forgive us. But God says, okay, I'll do that. But there is a consequence for your lack of faith. And that consequence is the people who knew life in Egypt, who were counted in the census, who were older than 20, they are not going to get to go into the promised land. It will be a new generation that walks into the promised land. So everyone's going to live in the wilderness for a while before they go into Canaan, but all the scouts who were unfaithful and didn't trust God do immediately die of plague. So only Joshua and Caleb remain who have spent time scouting in Canaan. Now, the people then decide, okay, well, we're going to show that we trust God and we're going to go to the land of milk and honey. And so Joshua and Caleb were like, yeah, no, you missed your chance. And God says you've got to wait. But the people go anyhow. And of course, they're routed. The people of Canaan totally win that attack. So once again, the people are not listening to God. They missed the boat on that thing. Chapter 15 offers some instructions on offerings. And we are again seeing there are instructions that of what you receive, you should always set a portion aside to give to God. In this case was a portion of flour and so forth to be offered to God. But I think this is still a message to us today. Whatever we have, we need to set a portion aside to give to God's work in the world, to share with those who do not have enough. There's also instruction here that many people in the Jewish faith still use to this day about putting tassels on clothes or putting tassels on their prayer shawls. And this was a way to remember obedience to God. It was also a physical reminder that they could hold it when they were feeling tempted to stray from God's instructions. In chapter 16, we have another rebellion, another group of people who don't think that things are going the way they should. The community is instructed to back away from the rebels, and God then clears out all the rebels. But I think one of the things for us to reflect on today is who in our world is standing up against God and wanting to do things their own way. And are we standing with them, or are we separating ourselves from them to show that we are standing with God? Are we distracted and sometimes not even paying attention to what's going on? So we may be rebel adjacent because we're not even paying any attention to God or the rebels or anything. We're just like, distracted. When we look at Mark chapter 3, we continue with a Sabbath story, and Jesus is healing someone on the Sabbath, which was against the rules because healing was considered work and not rest. And Jesus is like, you know what? I think compassion trumps laws. And this person is sick and needs to be healed. I'm going to heal them on the Sabbath. We have a nice little story of evil spirits, again, recognizing Jesus. I kind of I'm just growing to really love these little stories of the evil spirits who cry out and say, like, hey, aren't you God's son? What are you doing here? Like, you are the divine God. Um, and yet, so many people around Jesus are completely oblivious to what's going on. Jesus takes his followers away for a little time of instruction and development, and he sets 12 of them aside to be the apostles that we know to this day. And then we've got this strange little story of how Jesus' family has come and want to talk to him while he's teaching and a bunch of people are around. And Jesus doesn't go out to him and says, yeah, that's not my family. My family are my followers. My family are the people who are obedient to God's way and God's will. So there's probably been some stuff going on where Jesus' family is like, okay, we lived with Jesus for 30 years and he was a normal guy, and now he's off doing all this other stuff. Now, Mary probably remembers there was some weird prophecies and stuff going on at Jesus' birth, but it's been 30 years and things were normal. And so she and her family were kind of like, okay, we're just normal, and whatever Jesus is, whatever. But now Jesus is actually doing these things, but when the angel came and told Mary what was going to happen, the angel didn't explain exactly what was going to happen as Jesus moved into his adulthood and what Jesus' time on earth was going to be like. So, Jesus' family, I like to have some compassion for them because they probably just didn't understand what was going on. But I think the more important thing for us to reflect on is that every person who follows Jesus, no matter where they've come from, no matter what's happened in their life, if you're a follower of Jesus, you have a place in Jesus' family. There is a place for you. It is very clear here in Mark that there's no limit on this. If you are following Jesus and you are obedient to God's way, there's a place for you in Jesus' family. I think we need to think about this. First of all, are we claiming our place? Do we still feel like we're on the outside and maybe we don't fit in? Here, claim this message that Jesus wants you. If you are following, you are part of Jesus' family. So claim that. But how are we as Jesus' church, as Jesus' mission in the world, his community of believers, are we reaching out to the people who are looking for a place to belong? Are we bringing them together? Are we sharing this good news with them? Are we letting people know that they have a place at Jesus' side? And I think that's a real challenge for us to step forward with bold faith and start sharing this in a way that brings more people together and makes them know that they belong to Jesus. Have a super day, and we'll see you next time.